Well, we made it, folks. I just finished The Eye of the World, so my thoughts are fresh in my head. I loved this book. Just full stop. I mean, everyone has expectations going into the series, but especially The Eye of the World, I feel like there are expectations like when you start reading, people say, well, just remember it's a Tolkien ripoff, you know, you can get through that. Also, like 2/3 of the book are just boring, and the ending is rushed. It gives a sense of like, okay, this book is, I just kind of have to trudge through it and then get to the other side. And it really wasn't like that. It was a totally different kind of experience. So first I'll be doing a spoiler-free discussion, and then I'll be talking spoilers because I need to talk about this book. So much happens in this book. Like, that's the first thing I want to get off my chest and relay to others. It's like, unlike The Way of Kings, where The Way of Kings takes place in basically one main location, two main locations pretty much, The Eye of the World stretches far. A lot of new towns and experiences and cultures and people, and there's a lot of action. Wonderful scenes of suspense. I was surprised at some of these suspenseful scenes and some of these more horrific elements. There are some scary moments that I'm looking forward to seeing done in the series and how they do it, because I think, oh, that could actually be really disturbing. Another main issue that I think people have with starting The Wheel of Time is getting used to Robert Jordan's writing style. Some people aren't going to vibe with Jordan's writing style, and that's just how it is. I don't know. I've read some slogs. I've read Moby Dick twice. You know, I like Moby Dick. You have to be in the right frame of mind for this type of writing, of course. I'm a kind of person, I love the visual information. I love the sensory details. I love the smells, you know, the sweat, the grime, the dirt, everything they have to go through. Yeah, it adds to the page count, but if you're not just looking for the plot or story, you know, these things matter. These are things I like. The characters in the book, I feel deeply attached to them, that if anything happens to them, God forbid, there's going to be issues. They make some stupid decisions. You know, they're like kids, you know, they're not kids, they're young adults. Matt is definitely up there for being stupid and stubborn, but I thought Perrin had a surprising arc that I really love. Nynaeve is a character I especially love. I really liked Nynaeve because I could see how she is a character, like, just the basic premise of her character was interesting to me, how she is, where a wisdom is supposed to have all this wisdom, and she's really young, so she's kind of precocious, but has to defend herself. Tom Marilyn is a standout character for me. Just, you know, he's a character that you don't expect to love, because he seems at first like a throwaway character that's just like, oh, I know this type of character. And, you know, that's something else I want to say. Like, there are so many parts in this book that you think, oh, this fantasy trope, like, as much as Jordan does rely on some major fantasy tropes, there's already a lot being subverted, I feel like. You know, characters that we don't expect to be major players are major players. I really felt like their relationships were very realistic. And that's another point I want to get across, is that I feel like this was a really grounded take on fantasy in a way, even though there is, you know, all these tropes and very classic fantasy elements. The way the violence is described, the way the world is, and the different factions and the politics. This is a huge adventure. There's a lot of traveling, so in some ways it reminded me of like Westerns, and you know, I enjoy Westerns because there's a lot. I enjoy the detail of the physical, just like setting up camp, you know, how to deal with horses. And the ending of this book, with no spoilers at all. Some say, yeah, it was rushed. The problem I had a little bit with the ending was that it was kind of vague. You know, there weren't really any definite answers, and it felt kind of like, is this way or is this another way? So it's slightly confusing at the end, so it makes me want to jump immediately into The Great Hunt, which, you know, I have. There are so many memorable scenes in this book and moments that I love, character moments, relationship moments. So I don't really give ratings, but definitely one of the best fantasy books I've read. I felt so connected to these characters, and that's kind of how I judge a book, you know. And I don't know how I'll feel about it later on in the series. Maybe compared to later books, I won't, you know, love this book as much. But if books 2 and 3 are supposedly better, then I'm in luck. I feel like everything I could have wanted in a fantasy book was wrapped up neatly in The Eye of the World. I mean, that's my spoiler-free review. A bit all over the place. So for people who have read The Eye of the World, let's get into spoilers and let all of the other non-cool people exit. Spoilers! There's so many moments I want to talk about that were great. First off, Rand's relationship with his father, Tam, so good. Like, I just love that relationship, and he seems like such a good father. It makes me sad that Rand has to leave and go away from his dad, but his dad is so understanding. Heartbreaking when he is injured and Rand is just trying to do anything he can to get his father healed. The Trolloc raid was intense. Not expected it just came out of left field, and it felt really brutal. Immediately you feel like, wow, okay, the stakes have been raised. There's serious danger in this world. There's a lot of harm that can be done. And then we're off on our journey. I love Lan. I mean, I don't think that's a controversial take. Lan is amazing. I mean, he's sort of hilarious in just how stoic he is. They go to Baerlon, that first town they go to, that like all of the Emmonsfielders are just like, whoa, my God, this is crazy. One thing I will say, when they see Padan Fain, the peddler, in Baerlon, I was like, this guy's gonna rat them out. Like, this is totally a dark friend. And I felt, there was one moment when I felt like Rand was being too stupid, because I was like, okay, this guy's following you. He's in an alley just like, oh, don't tell anyone I was here. And Rand is just like, okay, I'm sure there's nothing weird about this. And that's another thing. I feel like people are gonna be annoyed with them for never listening to Moiraine, but you have to understand, it's like, to them, and Aes Sedai is like the most evil people, the most dangerous people. Like, imagine that equivalent in our world, and then being like, okay, now you got to trust this person. From their perspective, I totally get that mistrust. When Nynaeve comes and tries to get them, that I love that, because I love Nynaeve. I think she's just a wonderful character and funny. She kind of treats the other Emmonsfielders like they're her own younger brothers and sisters. When they get to Shadar Logoth, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but the abandoned city, so great. The descriptions of the ruined town and how it's just still impressive even though it's decaying. Mat, of course, I just love the logic of, when Mat takes the ruby dagger. Afterwards, Moiraine is like, you didn't take anything he gave you, right? You didn't take anything he gave you. They're like, no. And then Mat later to Rand is like, oh yeah, I got this from that demon. And Rand is like, oh, we can't take any gifts. And he's like, oh no, he didn't hand this to me. I just took it. It makes sense. Don't worry about it. Okay, like, guess we'll just not address this and not tell Moiraine. I'm sorry, like, that was just funny. When the whole team gets separated, that was a shock to me. The stakes just felt suddenly really high. They're separated for so long in the book. Egwene is paired with Perrin, and what they have to go through together, and how Perrin is discovering himself. They meet the traveling people and the wolves, and then they're captured by White Cloaks, and I just loved those scenes. Mat and Rand are together, which I think the reason people complain about these middle scenes when Mat and Rand are traveling, it's because they're kind of depressing. They're probably the most depressing part of the book. They have no money, running from mysterious people. And the scene where Rand uses his power for the first time but isn't aware, the lightning bolt scene, I loved that because it felt like real. It felt like Robert Jordan had this experience at like a crappy hotel or bar in his own life and transcribed it, but in a fantasy setting. Rand and Mat can tell like they're going to get robbed, but they can't really do anything. They're already in this inn. They can't make a scene. It's just so sketchy. Things keep escalating. And then there's the Dark Friend is there too, so it's just even more trouble. Then we have that great moment of the lightning bolt. It just was a badass moment. Tom Marilyn, I don't know what happens with Tom. It's hinted very heavily that he survived, which, I mean, you got to just trust. But Tom, when he sacrificed himself for Rand, it's like, oh man, I love Tom Marilyn. And he's like, he cares, like they don't even realize how much Tom is caring about them. Like he's literally like on the boat training them how to be gleemen in case they need to, like just in case, you know, and then giving them their tools so that if they didn't have Tom's training while they were on the ship, they would not survive. They would not make it through to Camelin. They wouldn't go anywhere. And when they get to Camelin, oh man, is it great. And we meet Loyal, who's wonderful. One of the scenes I was surprised by, of course, this is when Logain comes in, the false dragon. Seems so out of left field and accidental that it was kind of annoying, like, oh, this kind of coincidence can't just happen. It just so happens that Rand is climbing up onto a wall and falls into the palace garden or whatever, and he meets Elaine and Gwyn, I believe that's their names. There's like this power dynamic going on between the Aes Sedai and the palace. Absolute favorite scene in the book, I think, is when the whole team gets back together, when Moiraine, Nynaeve, and Egwene, and Lan, and Perrin finally come to the inn where Rand and Mat are. That's so great, and it just felt... They've been separated for so long, and it just keeps getting better. Like, you think, what's going to happen from here? And then they go to the Ways, and I had no idea there was going to be portal hopping and stuff, quick travel. So early on in a series, The Blight, I loved reading about. People say it's rushed, but I thought we spent a good amount of time in The Blight. I mean, I felt like I didn't want to spend any more time there. I'm in LA, there's a heat wave going on. I was reading this and I'm like sweating. I'm like, can we just get out of The Blight? Like, I'm hot enough as it is. I don't need to be reading about how impossibly hot it is in The Blight. The Green Man was great. Oh man, the way he died just made me so sad. The one thing, like when Rand goes into his like seeing Balsamon, and it was sort of confusing and jarring, and it basically wields the one power. I'm looking forward to book 2 because I need some more context. Rand thinks he killed Balsamon, and it's kind of funny to me because Rand's like, I did it, right, Moiraine? He's done. And Moraine's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Obviously, he's not gone. I thought it was a little weird how, Nynaeve and Egwene and Moiraine and Lan know about Rand wielding this power, but the others don't. I don't know how I feel about that. It's a lot. It's a lot in an ending, and it's jam-packed. It makes me want to instantly read the other book. In fact, I want to be reading it right now instead of recording this, so I'm probably going to... I don't think I have any other thing I want to talk about. It surpassed my expectations. I really care about what's going to happen, but I also felt like I got a full, thorough fantasy story. Like, I feel like if I read this when it first came out and there wasn't another one, I would have been like, damn, that was a satisfying. I got my money's worth. That felt like a full fleshed out fantasy story. So much happened, a lot of development. It felt complete, but it also left me wanting more. And that's what you want to do, folks. So thank you for watching. Thank you. Yeah, have a good one.